And here we are. Man, I just noticed in that intro video that when it goes to the picture of Rob, like he looks like he's smoking a baseball bat. Like how damn big is that cigar? Like geez. Like it's a big, I don't know what you call your gauges and all that other stuff. So hi guys, David here with the Whiskey Rebellion. We are talking about cigars tonight, which I know almost nothing about. So that's actually kind of an appropriate intro. First of all, how's everyone doing? Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for people who are watching or will be watching. And we'll start with, what's everyone drinking tonight? Let's go to Billy. What you got?
Well, so for me, I'm drinking some high quality H2O.
Okay.
I got to keep an eye on the missus. She's a little under the weather, so
oh no,
I need to be on my P's and Q's. So no drinking tonight.
Gotcha. Well, that's all right. You're being responsible. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
There you go. Mr. Puffery Daddy, Jeff, sir, what you drinking?
Well, right now I'm sipping. I'm doing the brothers tonight. I'm doing right now the Ezra Brooks.
Okay.
Collection, 107 proof, and then I'm going to switch it up to the Rebel Yell Distillers Collection.
Gotcha. What do you think of that one?
113. I love it.
Yeah.
This will be sacrilegious to most people here. I think the Rebel line runs circles around Weller every single day of the year.
Really?
I enjoy it.
And I picked up a couple of these bottles at a store. It was a store pick in Knoxville for $35.
Wow.
Beat that shit with a stick.
Right.
You really can't.
That,
Remember we did that. Go ahead.
Usually I see them around 50 or 60. That's when I went in there and they had it for 35. I grabbed two.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that one.
Grabbed three. I gave one to my future son-in-law.
There you go.
Nice.
Well, nice. Very cool. Yeah, I remember back a while ago we did we were doing those blind taste tests, and Billy, you did Rise, and you rated that. I can't remember if it was a Rebel 100 or which one it was. It was like either your first or second favorite.
It was my second favorite. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the Rebel line is a wheated bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I compare it to the Wellers. And I just
Gotcha.
I drink them every day.
As far as weeders go, for sure.
Wellers.
Yeah, I got a 10-year on the shelf that I've had now for about last year and a half that I won't finish till I can get my hands on another. I mean,
you guys don't sleep on Rebel, seriously. Gino, speaking of, what are you drinking?
I'm not drinking Rebel.
Yeah.
I'm actually
drinking rye.
It is a rye. It is Pendleton's 12-year rye.
There you go.
This stuff is distilled, and it's a product of Canada. It's bottled in Oregon and shipped out. It's a 12-year rye. Hey, hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
It's just a mild 80 proof. I enjoy this when I can get it, and I will use this as a daily sipper until it's gone.
For sure.
Yeah, it doesn't have
It's
much
a cool
light.
looking bottle. I like
It's
detail
nice.
on it. And you said that's the 12?
This is a 12-year rye.
Yeah.
They also do a bourbon and a whiskey, a Roundup whiskey, I think it's called. It's themed around the Calgary Stampede Rodeo.
Okay. Very cool.
Each one that I have sampled has been a quality beverage, but I prefer the rye. It's got just a little bit more of what I'm looking for.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And this is a nice typical rye. It's one of the better ryes that I have tried. And I've tried a lot of them. And this is, if I have to pick a rye and tell someone, go find this is the one I'm going to tell you to go find. Nice price point too, about $45.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
No.
I could live with that. And I am drinking and I've had it on the show many times, the Conmara, the peated Irish whiskey. And this is one of these ones that's like, if you want to find out if you can tolerate peat or not, like this is the one to go, because it's got a strong peat nose, but in the flavor profile of it, it's not on the palate. It's not very robust. So it's almost, for a freak like me, it's almost not peaty enough. But I think for a lot of people who want to try and find out if they like it or not, this would be one to try, because it's a gentle way to dip your toe in. But for all that, it was a good price point on it. I enjoy it still. So that's what I'm on tonight.
Nice.
So our topic tonight, came to me as a result of I spent the weekend. There was a couple of beer festivals here in Murfreesboro on Saturday. There was one at Panther Creek Brews here in Murfreesboro, like I said, and there was another at this mansion. I can't remember the name of it, but that was like the big festival. And there was this other smaller event, and there they had a homebrew guy who I guess travels all around in his trailer and what have you. And it's called Prohibition. Jeff, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
Was he dressed very dandily with the beard?
Yeah, he's a not tall fella.
I've met him. He's author's written a couple of like horror themed books. I've met him a couple times. He's out of Manchester or Tullahoma.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. But he was talking cigars with some friends I was there with, and they're big cigar guys. And he was talking about I guess the virtues of doing like a house stick or in-house created stick versus kind of going to the masters and trying to get it labeled, and that's where he fell on that rather than making his own. I had mentioned the name before. I'm gonna look it up again real fast. So I'm bad with names. David Blanco, and that was like a name drop, and I was like, that sounds like a name drop, but I don't know that name or what that means to anybody.
So he said, was David Blanco there, or was
David Blanco makes his cigars?
Okay, that's actually the cigar company I went to Nicaragua with.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and he told me something else about this that it was interesting, that that they get leaf from Cuba and roll it there, and so for people who are kind of obsessed with the idea of having a Cuban, like, you can get it, it's just not rolled in Cuba. How much of a difference that makes to anybody. And so for me, as someone who doesn't really know this world that's outside of it, like, give me the over under, guys. Anybody who has an opinion about this.
So here's the thing. Anybody who's a cigar smoker is 90% chance a bourbon drinker of some sort, or at least have some dealings with bourbon. The two groups really play well together. There's a lot of commonality. So before I get to the whole thing about Cubans, so when you sit down, when you walk into a cigar shop, nobody cares about what you do. Nobody cares about how much money you make, where you live, what you drive. You could be a UPS guy sitting there with the president of the United States. It's the same difference to us. We leave all that political BS outside. We talk about sports. We talk about the weather, but we try not to get into political things, and we try not to get into weather. So when it comes to cigars, there's a lot of different ways you can go, and much like bourbon, there are some hard to get. There are some expensive stuff. There's some very inexpensive stuff. And depending on your likes and your tastes, price can sometimes play a part. But like, for instance, Xeno Platinum is a very, very expensive cigar. Opus X is a very expensive cigar. Sometimes they can be up above $30 for one stick. Like, Eagle Rare 17 is going to be up there in price.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I'm not into Opus X. I'm not. I will pay $20 for a Padron Adversario. But I try to keep my sticks somewhere between $8 and $12 a stick. The reason why I do that, if I see something I like, I usually buy 3. I smoke one and I age the other 2. Now, there are house cigars. So I give you a couple. So like, these are all house cigars. So no labels or anything like that. You usually have to find out from the store, what the wrapper is, what the filler is, and all those kind of things. And they're usually very inexpensive, somewhere between $6 to $8 max. Sometimes the ring gauge, like you mentioned before the show started, Rob had a pretty big cigar. That ring gauge was probably somewhere in the 60 range.
Versus what's that? Like one of the ones you
So
had there.
this would be more of a common size, like a 20,
Okay.
something like that. You know,
He was
it's not
smoking a 60.
right.
How the hell
So,
does he have lungs? I just,
well, here's the interesting fact about cigars. So,
You
just
don't.
recently, the FDA tried to lump cigars alongside cigarettes and vaping, and we were very victorious in our fight where we're no longer in the same group. So typically, you do not inhale cigar smoke,
Mm.
and if you do, you probably won't have lungs for very long. You know, so you generally you take it in, you swirl it around like a good wine, hold it for a few minutes, few seconds actually, 20 seconds, and you release it.
just in the
So
mouth, like
right,
mouth and the nose, and that
right.
doesn't go down.
So and much like bourbon, I would personally never tell anybody how to smoke a cigar or what cigar to smoke. Label on, label off, what kind of cut. It's totally up to you. But real quick about Cubans. So in the late 80s, early 90s, Cubans were a big deal only because they were considered contraband. And
Mm.
it was hard to get and there was a mystique behind
So
it.
of course you want it more. Yeah.
Right.
Not
But
you, but yeah.
Cuban cigars are great to have a couple of rare sticks, but you have to watch out for counterfeits, which is rampant. I mean,
Mm.
especially with the Cohibas. I mean, it's absolutely rampant. And truth be told, there's a lot of cigars that are not Cuban that smoke a lot better. You
Yeah,
know,
and I've heard you talk about that before. So that did make me to kind of dovetail what you're saying into the idea that this this guy this David Blanco, not guy, like this company, right, this brand, that they get Cuban leaf. Is Cuban leaf that noteworthy, or is
so
this more,
I think that's a little bit more of
dare
a
you
free.
call it, dare you
absolutely.
say?
It's true leaves grown in Cuba are hard to get out of Cuba because Cuba doesn't produce as much as they used to, and it is tightly controlled by the government because the government owns the
The means of
factories.
production, yes.
So what they a lot of times are talking about is almost every one of these cigar or the long time old standards, the My Fathers, the Padrones, the Romeo Juliets. Um, they were the families that fled Cuba when Castro started taking over.
Yeah.
They brought their seeds with them. So a lot of times what they're actually meaning is Cuban seed,
Seated.
but
Mhm.
Mhm.
they settled in primarily Honduras and Nicaragua and Dominican Republic because those areas had a lot of volcanic soil, was very good for
Good
growing,
rich, yeah.
good and rich. And then they basically developed lines from those, but they're still using the seeds that are descended from the ones that they were using in Cuba. So that's a lot of times what people mean is they actually mean Cuban seed.
Gotcha.
But like Billy said, a lot of the cigars we're getting in other places now, there's a lot more flavor varieties because of the different soils they're now being grown in. And Cubans, I will clarify that I've never smoked one, but I've read a bit about it, talked to people.
Hmm.
Cubans tended to have a very mild, kind of one line flavor profile, whereas with what we're getting now, the flavor profiles can be all over the place, from mild to medium to strong
Hmm.
to smooth to chocolatey to spicy. So you get, in my opinion, from what I've read, it sounds like we've got a way more variety today than they did when everybody was just smoking Cubans.
Gotcha.
Correct. So, and one of the other things as well. So, just a kind of footnote in history. So, everybody's familiar with John F. Kennedy, Cuban Missile Crisis, the whole
For
nine.
sure.
So, basically, what happens is just before he signed the Cuban embargo, he had his press secretary go out all around DC, Virginia, and get his hands on every box of Cuban cigars that he could, which came up to about 3 pallets, probably a little under shoulder height. And as soon as the cigars were in the White House, he signed the embargo.
Yeah.
Because
A
at that,
politician would not do that, Billy.
of course not.
Never.
So that made it to where people wanted cigars because they were all of a sudden considered
Rare.
contraband and
Yep,
rare.
they were rare enough.
So I can personally tell you, I've smoked quite a few Cuban cigars. I still have several, and they're fun to have. Just to say you have it, it would almost be not the same, but I have Blanton's. Okay, I'm happy.
I was thinking it's probably closer to having that jar of illegal moonshine. You know, you can pull it out and say, "Hey, you know, I got the real," but drink it all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
You go blind. Yeah.
No, you won't go blind.
And much like some bourbons, so your average,
you know where to get it.
Your average cigar, let's say a Padron Adversario or 7,000, that tobacco could be anywhere from 5 to 7 years old before you get it. And cigars, if you keep them humidified and under the right conditions, I have 2 cigars from 2001. Still sealed up.
Good shape.
Yeah, they're perfectly fine. But you have to maintain, you have to rotate, you have to keep your humidity right, your balance, you have to keep your cigar clean. You don't want to have any bacteria come in where you have cigar beetles, which are actual bugs that will bury themselves into your cigar.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, you can have white mold, which is good, but you don't want green mold. You can
what
have
does white mold indicate?
Give me a sec. Well, it shows that it's been aging properly, and I think I have a couple with some age on it.
Plume, and plume is probably one of the biggest argued things in the cigar world. Is plume actually a real thing, or is it not?
But with cigars,
is this like a neck pour equivalent, or
in a way, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
In a way it is. I would tell anybody who's starting out with cigars, talk to your friends if they smoke cigars, because they're going to lead you in the right direction. You don't want to give somebody who's just starting out with cigars like a Series R that's going to make them green in the face.
Yeah, that's usually what happens to me. Someone's like, "Oh yeah, you should try cigars," and it's like, I think one of the first cigars I ever smoked was called Uzi. My Uzi weighs a ton, and like it was.
But did you actually inhale it?
No, like just in the mouth.
Okay.
You said, but like, I'm not inhaling down. Yeah. Like I knew that even then, you know.
But even as a beginner, you want to give somebody something light, like a Connecticut maybe, to start them out with.
That's where I'm at.
So Connecticut it's a good. You can have it in the morning. You can have it lunch. You know, but you know, I'm like a bull in a china shop. I can smoke a Maduro 7 o'clock in the morning after breakfast.
I'm the same way. I cannot hardly find a Connecticut I like.
Yeah, because it just doesn't do anything for us.
Yeah,
I'm still searching, but that's the level that I'm at. I'm still in the Connecticut level.
So were the weird ones when I first started, because I only had my first one in August 2019. I almost immediately went straight to the Habanos and the Maduros because I just
like the darker kind of
right. And once you get more into the industry and you get to meet some of the big players, like I have a cigar box signed by Old Man Padron before he passed, where all his sons. I actually walked into his shop one day, and he was just there, and you know I bought a cigar, and you know we got to talking. He's like, come in the back, have a cigar, and I got to sit down and talk and have a cigar with this guy. It's one of the few times I would say I was awestruck by somebody, you know. But he really is just a average, down-to-earth guy. Talk to you. He didn't care about money. He was into his cigars and his family. Made a living for himself. Just recently, I did an event down in Little Havana
Oh, okay.
where I got one of the big guys. I think you guys saw some of the pictures.
Mhm.
So some nice
Mhm.
stuff in there. You know, this will just end up in my humidor.
For sure.
Probably, you know, won't
wow.
get much use out of it. But again, when it comes to cigars, I think it's all about what you like. So this would be something that you're going to spend some quality time with. This would be something called like a short story, meaning it's going to smoke within the next 15, 20 minutes, whereas this could be a full 45.
How fast do you puff on them? That I'd get about an hour out of that short one. I'd get at least 2 hours out of that bigger one.
So for me,
Well, you're kind of a machine, though, huh?
well, I've been
By your own lights.
I'll be 48 in November, and I've been smoking
Remember that.
cigars since I was probably 19, 20. So smoking with my grandfather.
Yeah.
You know, and it was so wild because cigars back then, the quality was horrible. They were all green and different colors. Now, much like bourbon, a lot of cigars are very consistent, even to what they put in the box. They make sure they all look the same.
Right.
So there's a big refinement.
Right. And
Mhm.
even like bourbon again, bourbon stops aging once it hits the bottle. But you know, you can have cigars and you can have them for years. A box of Padron 7000 is going to set you back about 200, 220 bucks.
Jeez.
So, you know, depending on where you are with it, that's why most people will go in and, you know, get a handful of sticks. And much like if you're in a bourbon group, people will pass stuff around. Hey, let me send you this and let me give you that. You know, I've sent out the boys a couple of ashtrays and some cigars. So it's one of those things, again, you can find somebody who's into cigars, and the chances of them being into bourbon, whiskey, rums is very high.
Yeah.
It's part of your tribe.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild because if you find somebody who drives Jeep, they're into cigars, they're into bourbon, they're into hunting. It's a full-fledged, this is my village, this is where I live.
Like full spectrum, you know, gentleman's kind of hobbyist.
Yeah. But again, go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was just say it is a hobby. It's a way of life.
Mhm.
Because to sit and smoke a cigar, you have to take some time.
Yes.
And so it's not you know, like people have a cigarette, they step out and they, you know, in a hurry to get one down and go back in.
Yeah, because they're just trying to get that nicotine.
You know, you're committing an hour to even up to 3 hours sitting there with this thing. So, you know, it for me, since I don't smoke inside, it's, you know, I go out on the screen and porch out back. I've kind of made a pact to myself that I don't have a TV out here because it's my time to disconnect, read a book, listen to some music.
I was about to say, do you take your phone with you?
It is out here, but I tend
try to stay off it.
Yeah, I tend,
exactly.
and when I get into it and relaxing and I'm starting to read the book, I start paying attention to the book. You know, I'll check the phone a little bit here and there, but not as much as a lot of times I do when I'm like sitting inside and we're watching TV and I'm on it. But it's also, as Billy said, when you spend time and you go to lounges, we're very fortunate here in Middle Tennessee. We've got a lot of lounges, a lot of places. You end up, you go in there, you end up, if you're in the right lounge, you end up spending time getting in conversations with new people. Now, I have gotten into some conversations that were political in nature in these lounges. A lot of times I find people
that was also my experience, but go ahead.
Yeah. But what I was going to say, I've got, you know, I do find people that think more along my lines, but we don't always agree on everything. But I have gotten in conversations with people that don't think the way I do. What I found is I've never had a conversation that has been adversarial. I've never had a conversation where we have not been able to respect each other.
Yeah.
Generally because when they're enjoying it, they tend, in my opinion, they tend to have more respect for each other. They tend to be more open-minded about listening to other people. So that's my take on it is don't have those conversations if you can't be that kind of person.
And
But if you're going to be that kind of, if you're going to have those conversations, you've got to be open and listen and respectful. And I found most of the time that's the way most people in cigar lounges are. And I've met people from all kinds of life, like Billy said, from the all over the road truck driver that spends most of his time away from his family to the rich people. And I've never, well, I won't say that. I've been in a couple lounges. It seemed like it was more along the show than it was for the lounge, but for the most part, most of them are just, they're there to enjoy a stick and take some time to decompress and hang with like-minded people. And when I say like-minded people, that doesn't mean we agree on everything. It's just at our core, we have the same core beliefs.
Everybody there is enjoying a cigar.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do anything to take away from that enjoyment. So we're going to respect each other.
Exactly. And for me, I consider myself particularly blessed because I have a spouse who not only condone but support my bourbon and cigar habit, where she will come home with one or the other or both on her own accord. So I consider myself particularly lucky. I don't know if you guys could see it, but that is that white kind of substance
Sopranos,
there.
huh? Oh yeah, I see the.
Yeah.
What'd you call that again?
That's beneficial.
So
Well,
some people call that plume. Billy was calling it white mold. There's not really a clear consensus on exactly what it is.
And
consuming it does what?
Well, so if you was to light this cigar, what you would want to do is take either like a damp towel, not wet, but just damp, and simply wipe it away. This would be like the dust on a barn find. Put it like that.
Okay.
And this is a CAO Soprano, which they don't really make anymore. So I happened to get my hands on one. I've had this cigar for over 10 years. So I kept it. So just to give you guys some idea of some other odd stuff that's out there.
What in the world is that?
Man, it looks like a dog turd.
So the story behind those.
What? You have to explain this, please.
Yeah, man.
Go for it, Puff Daddy.
Yeah, the story was that in Cuba, they were allowed to take, I think, one cigar home a day. And so they got to rolling those and twisting 3 small cigars around each other to make, quote, one cigar.
So that's their technically correct is the best kind of correct.
That's the story. Don't know if it's really true or not, but that's the story behind that type of.
Right.
I forget what that's called. Do you remember what it's called?
I forget too. It's been so long. That's the only one I've actually managed to get my hands on. So just to give you,
Molly's cut off here. She's.
Oh man, poor baby.
So just to give you guys kind of an idea. So these 2 cigars. So I have a tendency to put dates on certain cigars. So this one here, it was 2:30 p.m. Jackson Memorial Long-Term Care Center. It's the chef. I was there, and here a person I was with, and the date. So 9/29/09. The writing's fading more than anything else.
It's just fading from sitting in the humidor?
Yeah. So it's in the tube. There's the cigar itself. And the cigar itself has Spanish cedar on the inside of it. It's a
Oh.
very, very thin sheet.
Nice.
You can see it there.
Okay.
That's how thin it is.
Wow, yeah, you can almost kind of see the light through it.
Yeah. So that's one. And this one is sealed up in a glass tube, basically the same date. You could see the writings almost fading more than the cigar itself.
So when you store it in your humidor, you store it in the tube.
Yeah, in the tube, in the humidor.
Gotcha.
And I keep mine at about 68% humidity. So you want to aim between 68, 72. And remember, I was telling you guys I had an opportunity to have a cigar with Old Man Padron before he passed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, dude.
Wild.
And again, you see I have the date there up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a tendency to kind of do that just for myself. So I got his autographed sons, daughters. So that's something I'll cherish,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah,
So-
go ahead.
I was going to say, kind of a little bit more to kind of explain a little bit about what the gentleman told you. There is probably more puffery in cigars than there is in bourbon, if you can believe
Absolutely.
that.
I would agree on that.
So
highly.
aptly named.
So the David Blanco, his company Blanco Cigars, they actually do not make any cigars. All of their cigars are made and at the Plasencia factory in Nicaragua, Esteli, Nicaragua. So what David did for this gentleman is he would blend the cigar. So the Plasencia family has the farms that actually grows the cigar, the tobacco, harvests the tobacco, cures it, does everything. And they do all the rolling and manufacturing. Their factory does. David and other small companies like his, they will go to these factories and they will take different kinds of tobacco and figure out the types of leaves, how many leaves, how they want it bunched. They'll kind of blend it. It's kind of like a contract distiller, where so for instance, Old Dominic in Memphis.
For sure.
For the longest time, they didn't have a distillery, but Alex Castle went to MGP. She created the mash bill. She created everything, and then they distilled it for her to her specifications. So that's a very common thing in the cigar world. You'll have these small boutique cigars like Blanco and McAuliffe and others, where they go to here, they figure out exactly how they want the types of leaves blended, which kinds, how much, the ring gauge sizes and all this kind of stuff, and then the type of binder, the type of wrapper, and then they have that factory make it for them, because there's actually only a few factories that are actually physically making the cigars.
Gotcha.
That's a very common thing. But every one of those small cigar brands will have their story.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
And it's all a lot of this the cigar world is about what is the story that's told about that cigar that you're picking up and smoking.
Yeah, I guess the idea. I mean, you want to feel like whether it's a whiskey or a rum or a cigar, whatever it is, that you want it more if you feel like you're getting to participate in something special, right? Something bespoke, and unique, and made in just a certain way,
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing behind the Cubans too. Is like, well, you can't really get them, so that's why you want them.
And just like bourbons, again, there's a couple of big players that make a lot of different brands, a lot of different labels, if you will. So, of course, Buffalo Trace is the distiller. They have actual Buffalo Trace, and then they have Blanton's, and they have all these
Benchmark.
other, right, So, some are just solid one thing. Like Padrones only make Padrones. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, but then you have companies like Oliva, Opus X, who make other labels from their products. And keep in mind, with cigar tobacco, literally, it's raised from a plant leaf up to leaves. They're harvested. They're hung up in the dry house, aged, rolled, and that's it. There's no chemical process to it.
Mhm.
It's all just very naturally done.
Mm.
So for something that, even though this is a house blend cigar, this cigar is minimum probably 4 to 5 years old. From the
Mhm.
time it was planted to the time I picked it up, it was
Gotcha.
already 5 years. And this stick was probably, you can get a bundle of 25 for like $60, you know? So it's a good cigar to have. Um, but
And
go ahead.
I
I was gonna.
what he
Go
was
ahead, Jeff.
to go along with what he's saying. It is truly probably. I mean, everybody's organic's the buzzword. I mean, it pretty much is one of the few really organic things. When I went down and saw the Placencia farm, every when they talk about cigars being handmade, that is not puffery. It literally is truly 100% handmade. On the Placencia farm and factory, there is no machinery at all.
None.
They
One of the best I've ever
mix,
had.
Oh.
yeah, they mix their fertilizer by hand. They literally take it and mix it up to put out. They plant, they spread the seeds. They go through the little seedlings as they start to sprout and weed out the weak ones. Then they by hand move it to other plots as they grow as they get to a certain point. They
Oh, wow.
take it out to the fields to plant it by hand. Then they water it. On Placencia is the only thing you can consider kind of not handmade. They had a hose stretched through the field so they could pump the water out there instead of some factories literally have people walking with spray hoses spraying water.
Gotcha.
Then they start harvesting. They go through by hand and look at every leaf, and they cut off the leaves that are underperforming so that the other leaves can get all the nutrients.
So they're not drawing water. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, and then they pick them by hand, little by little. They go through and look at each plant, and they call a couple leaves off at one day, and they come back and call it another couple. Everything's by hand. Then it goes to the factory where it's, bundled to age. First goes, like you said, in the barn to start drying out. And they have these massive pallets in there to age. And when the temperature in the center gets to a certain temperature, they have to basically turn it over so that it doesn't burst into flames.
Oh.
And they do it one leaf at a time by hand.
By hand.
They look at every single leaf. They inspect and grade every single leaf by hand. It is literally a 100% handmade product, 100% all natural. So that's the other thing about people don't get about cigars is they don't have the health issues that cigarettes do because they don't have the chemicals. Cigarettes are not pure tobacco. They're tobacco with other fillers and other chemicals and other treatments. Cigars are truly 100% tobacco leaf.
And, like he was saying, George Burns, his doctor told him to stop smoking cigars.
Mm-hmm.
He literally outlived his doctor by like 20 years, and he smoked like 2 or 3 cigars every day up to the day he died, basically. And what I love about the cigar industry, because the way things are processed, it creates jobs throughout generations. Like if your dad was a roller, my son's going to be a roller, and so on and so on and so on. And just to give you an idea, if a roller is having a bad day, they will literally tell the roller, you know what, just go home, relax, take it easy, take the day off, because they don't want the roller to be tense and end up rolling a cigar too tight or
That's
too loose.
fascinating to
That's
watch.
wild.
Because then what's going to happen, I'm going to get a cigar that's rolled too tight, or it's going to have a plug in it or something of the sort, and it's going to ruin the experience for me. And as you know, these companies, what do you call them, tobacconists, they don't want you to have that, to the point to where if you have a bad cigar and you tell them, hey, this cigar was plugged, they'll give you another one because they believed in their product so much.
Yeah, I'll bet. That's
Uh,
wild.
so
It's so labor intensive. That's to
But
still
yet-
make things that way. I mean, I think it's great because
but yet and
how
still,
many things can you say that of?
right? But yet and still, just think about it. You can get a great cigar for $7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
You know,
Yep.
The other thing that impressed me visiting down there was the amount of care, and I know it's not just Plasencia because I've talked to others that have had experience with other cigar manufacturers, but they truly care about their employees and trying to make their whole life better. They're building these factories in very impoverished areas.
Mhm.
I
I
have
can imagine.
a
We lost you there on audio.
visiting Nicaragua and seeing the places these people live. Literally, their houses were literally built out of whatever scrap
available.
they could find. You know, conditions that our poor people are filthy, stinking rich compared to what they're in. Some of the happiest people that I met on this
Mhm.
on this trip, and in these factories, they take care of them. The fact that Plasencia keeps a doctor or a nurse on staff, anybody that works for them, including any of their family, can go to the on-site clinic for medical
Mhm.
care. They have a daycare and busing system, so they'll go around and pick up their workers and their families, bring them there, take care of the kids, and then when it's time for school, take the kids to school, pick them up, bring them back, so that the family can work. And these people were just happy going in there, watching. They were working hard, they were being industrious, but
Mm-hmm. But they were
you could
happy.
tell they were happy. And when you encounter them and talk to them, they were proud of what they were doing.
That's so awesome.
It's good business.
It was really an amazing experience.
It's
And,
very
you know-
good business sense on their part too, because once you've done that with generation number one, generation number two comes along.
Yep.
Number three,
And they get
number four,
enculturated into that. Yeah.
and you develop that, and it's just it's good business sense to do that.
and even for me,
And it's just the right thing to do.
one of the reasons why I enjoy making my product is because it's made by hand, you know, and I put a lot of integrity into it because I know I've touched every bottle,
Mm.
you know. So if
No, you don't got to sell us on this. We know, man. We know.
Oh, no.
but you know, it's little things like if a seal leaks, I take responsibility for it because I touched that seal,
Sure.
I touched that top. And let me tell you, like Jeff was saying, a lot of problems that we have in this country, and we like to say those are first world problems. I like to call BS on that because there are countries that are hundreds of years behind us and don't have the problems that we have.
Yeah.
They're
Yep.
some of the poorest countries in the world, believe it or not.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as homelessness.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as people being hungry because of
Well,
what they
it's-
survive on versus us.
Priorities, you know.
And you know, not getting into it, but our greed is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, but two other things I want to say before it gets too late. I want to say shout out to Chuck again. When I do go back to having a couple of drinks, this larceny is going to be the first one I pull the
Ooh,
trigger on.
Nice.
So thank you there, Mr. Godfather. Also, fellas, today is October 2nd. It is my big brother's birthday.
Nice.
So
Yep.
I
we
want
got
to
a
say
toast.
happy
Yeah.
birthday to him.
Happy
He's
birthday,
a
Walter.
knucklehead. He's a knucklehead. We've had our ups and downs, as any brothers would have. But my brother hustle, his work ethic, his discipline to be in a bodybuilding world. Fellas, when I tell you, I've watched my brother measure out every meal he's had for the day. And I'm like, I don't have that discipline. Not for in that field. I don't. Because I like to eat. I'm not doing that. But to see the dedication, the hard work, what he does to his body. I mean, and my brother's what you call all natural, if you will, from whatever standpoint. But I've seen this dude lift stuff. I'm like, dude, you just gonna lift the whole gym, huh? So shout out to my brother.
Nice.
I don't know what I would do without him. He keeps me inspired. So
that's awesome.
Happy birthday, Walter.
Happy birthday to yourself, brother.
That's it. And that's a good note to end the show on. Guys, this is really cool. I'm not a cigar guy, but I feel like I learned a hell of a lot. This is really cool. If people are interested in learning about cigars, these are your people. Come talk to us. But that said, really enjoyed this. Obviously, if you're watching, tell your friends, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, hit the little bell and the whistles and all that stuff so you get the notifications. And everyone have a good week. Drive like you know each other, and we'll see you next Monday, all right?
Be good to yourselves.
Boom.
Cheers.